So to start out, I've got a wooden board. It's kind of thin. And I've got my paints on a foam plate, my scissors. I've got some scrap paper, some paper towels, some water to clean brushes, of course, paint brushes. And I've got all these little pieces of paper that I pre-cut from magazines. So it's faces and grass and buildings. And then I've got the stack of collage paper, tacky glue. And also, it's good to use gloss varnish for thin paper as an adhesive instead of glue. And then this is my little paint collection. So to get started, I'm going to do a sky and like a sidewalk on the bottom. And then I'm going to add buildings in between. So I'm doing the sidewalk. I want it to be gray, so I've got mostly white. And I'm going to dip my paintbrush in the black because I'm not going to be using a whole lot of black. So I didn't add any to my little palette. So I'm just going to paint the bottom part of the sidewalk gray. And then I'm adding little lines, just where lines would be on the sidewalk. And now I'm doing the sky. So I've got a blue, it's called ultra blue, and then I'm mixing white just to kind of make it bright. And then now I'm going to start looking through my collage pieces and grabbing pieces that would be good buildings. And I'm going to use the tacky glue since this is kind of a thick piece of paper. It doesn't look thick, but the way it feels, it's almost like a really thin fabric. So I'm just going to put that down there. Wipe away any glue, and then I'm going to grab another piece of paper, cut it down a little, and then use this as another building. And I'm holding the paper as I put the glue on just to show you how I do it. But you can actually put the paper down and then place the glue and then flip it over. So now I'm going to cut some windows for this light brown building. I'm just going to put the glue down first and then start placing the windows. And you can move stuff around, cut it down if you need. And there's a reason why I left the one on the bottom right. I didn't fill it in. It's just a little square. So I'm actually going to make that like an open window, and someone's going to have their head sticking out of it. So I'm just kind of doing the outer area and leaving that space in between. And then I've got part of a face. So what I like to do is I like to cut out different features from different people in magazines and then pick one color that I kind of color over their whole face with to blend it in. And with Romare Bearden, it looks like he would either pick like a whole actual face of someone, or he would pick different features and would just leave them. Like you could tell, like it was obvious that he got one eye from one person and then one from another. But I want to like blend it in a little bit because I do like to paint. So I wanted to add the painting aspect of it. And so I've got part of a building here, and I'm going to just make that another building on this same street. And I'm going to add a little gray right in that area where there is some brown exposed, just so it fits in with the sidewalk. And then I'm going to add some more pieces to close that off to connect those two buildings. And this inspiration is from one of his pieces called The Block. And he did a lot of work in Harlem, in New York. And so this is kind of based off of that, where he had buildings in the background and then he would have people kind of in the front of buildings and around. And then now I'm going to create like a little fence in between the buildings. And then I'm going to paint that red just to give it a different color. I feel like I've been doing a lot of dark colors, so I want to brighten it up a little bit, change it up. And then I'm going to add some grass. So I just want to add these things to give it a little something extra. And then now I'm going to start cutting people. So I'm going to start with some pants. And you can start with like a face or a shirt. Like, it doesn't really matter. You just want to get to a point where you're slowly like layering things and creating people. And so now I'm just cutting down a shirt. And I would just try to think about how you think a shirt or pants would look. This is just a really simple, fun way to do this, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So now I'm just cutting a head and a neck of how I think it would look if I had to cut it out. And I'm going to add facial features to this. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just think about what the shape of pants or a shirt or a head would be, and then just go for it. So I was going to use glue though for the facial features, but I think I'll use the gloss varnish here because the papers are not too thick that I'm using. So I put some varnish onto the surface where I'm placing the smaller pieces, and then I put those on top, and then I put some more varnish over that so that it sticks better. So I've got the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. And then again, I'm going to use some paint to blend in the face, since all the different parts are different shades of color. So I kind of want it to sort of be one shade. So I'm doing the nostrils and then the eyebrows. And then I'm going to add a hat. I think that would look kind of cool. I've got my glue. I'm just going to glue that down. And then I'm going to do his hands. And again, I just try to like cut the shape of like little hands. I'm just making little cuts for the fingers. And then just going to place those down. And then I'm going to do some shoes now. I'm just taking some black textured paper and cutting out the shape of what I think shoes look like. And if you look at Romare Bearden's work, his stuff is just really fun. It's not like super perfect. The features that he does are very kind of simple. So now I'm painting the hands to match the color of his face. And then I'm painting a little more on the hat. And I want to add, not too many words, but I'll just add this one word that I had cut out. It's comfort. And it kind of makes me think of like a hotel, because there is a hotel called Comfort Inn. But this could also just be considered, I don't know, like an apartment building or a restaurant or something. So I'm just painting windows and the door, and then I'm painting some more grass outside near the tree. And then now I want to do someone riding a bicycle. So I cut some circles out of a magazine. They weren't wheels. I can't remember what exactly they were, but it was just these round things that I thought would look cool as bicycle tires. And then I'm cutting apart from a building as the rest of the bicycle. And I'm trying to remember honestly how a bicycle should look. or even like a scooter. I think this might end up looking more like a scooter. So I'm kind of doing the handlebars now, figuring out how to place those. And then I've got these huge glasses, and I'm cutting out a nose too. So this next face that I do, I want it to be like a bigger head and face, and I'm doing the lips now too. I'm cutting those out. But I want it to be a bigger head and face and like smaller body. So now I'm cutting his head. And he has kind of a big head, so it's like a cone head. So I'm cutting that down. I like when things are out of proportion, and that's how Romare Bearden did some of his work. He would have like really big faces, or some of the features were a lot bigger than others. Like he would have like really huge lips and then smaller eyes and nose. And so now I'm just gluing down those features. And I'm also cutting a hat for him. I'm using a map to cut out his hat. And then again, I'm going to color in his face. I'm mixing some brown and white just to get a different tone from the other ones. I'm defining his nose and eyebrows. And then I'm going to start cutting out his shirt. And it just takes a lot of cutting down and figuring out where you want to place it. I'm going to move the handlebars out of the way. Luckily, I didn't glue that down too hard and it didn't dry. But part of the handlebars did come off on my fingers. So I'll have to put those back. And then now I'm making his pants. And I'm trying to figure out how to make it so like he's just kind of riding by on this scooter. I want one of his legs to look like it's bent, or like one of his legs is crossed over the other. So that just takes a little bit of work and just kind of moving stuff around and cutting different angles to see how it would fit. And then now I'm going to do his arms. And I want him to be holding something. So I think I'm going to make him hold a mug of like coffee or something like that. And then on his other hand, maybe he'll have it on the handlebar. So he's not being too reckless. Even though he's already kind of like being unsafe by not looking ahead. And I'm going to add some hair for him. And then now I'm going to cut out some shoes for him. And I want those to be red because I want to add more popping colors. I'm going to let those dry for a second. And now I'm going to start cutting out his hands. And I'm just doing the same thing that I did with the other guy, where I just cut little fingers. And then now I'm actually doing the mug. So I've got the cup and the handle. And then his shoes are ready. And his shoes are super small. And on the right, you'll see that I'm adding a belt, a collar, and some buttons on this guy. And I also, instead of red, I wanted the little part of his hat to be green to match his whole outfit. And I want to add a little something more in the sky. So I'm going to add some sun. And I just took a piece of scrap paper. I put some yellow on it, and then I place it down and then pull it back. You can just put a circle and put some yellow in it, but I like the texture that came out with that. So now I'm using red and brown to do a building behind these other buildings. And then I'm using a tiny brush to kind of go into the little creases. Then I'm going to add some bricks with the brown. Now I'm going to add a little old lady trying to look over the fence. Like if you've ever had a nosy neighbor, this is her. She's kind of like trying to see over the fence, and I'm going to make her have like a huge hat. So right now I'm doing her fingers and part of her head. And then I'm going to make her this really huge, pretty hat. And her face is going to be covered, but she's kind of just trying to see what's going on in the city. Who's making noise? Who's this scooter guy going by not paying attention with his coffee mug? So I'm gluing down her hat and I'm trying not to smear the paint. I did put a lot of glue. So I'm just going to add more paint, and then I'm going to start putting some eyes. Just making some simple eyes, eyebrows, and I've got some nail polish on her nails. And that's it. So this is a really simple version. If you look at his work, he sometimes will have more people in it. But this is the gist of the kind of work he does, where he will have a background that are kind of like solid colors. And then here and there, he'll add different designs. And then, of course, with the faces, he does a lot of collage where he cuts out eyes, noses, and mouths. And he mixes them up to make different features. So I hope that you enjoyed this and that you followed along.